Well, good evening. I just want to talk a little bit about politics. Um, Obviously, is complicated, and I want to talk about two countries and try and tie those together. Where you say the United States has pulled in the rest of the world, NATO and the allies, to say that the reason that they're backing Ukraine is because of Russia has violated um, the sovereignty of the borders of Ukraine and are seeking to further annex their land and to overrun them. And so uh, they've gotten the whole world up in arms, literally, and we're arming them, we're giving away our arms. And then on the other hand, been very vocal about that. And President Biden and Congress, this is the only thing that Republicans and Democrats and the president agree on, and that is arming Ukraine to the teeth with our stuff and throwing billions and billions and billions of dollars in that effort, which really amounts to a proxy war against Russia. And so here we go. We're saying we want to see democracy defended. Then on the other hand, we do nothing for Haiti's democracy. But today's issue is we have an uproar going on right now in one of our allies countries, that is Israel. Israel's far-right government, headed by Prime Minister Netanyahu, is taking land from the Palestinians, literally taking their land. And keep in mind now, these Palestinians are Israeli citizens. And we're saying very little. We're not going to the UN to protest this. Very little is being said. The ambassador, the United States ambassador to the United Nations, very quiet. American ambassador in Israel, almost silent. So, you see how this is? You're allowing Palestinian land to be taken, and very little is said, very little protest is said. But we want to speak up and arm Ukraine on the same basis that their land is being taken. And so there's that. There's this the dichotomy about what's right and what's wrong. So when we simply say that, or try and say this very simple situation, it's not. On the one hand, we want to speak up boldly. And then on the other hand, it's as if we're mute. Absolutely mute. So it's a thing that we need to really think about. What is right and what is wrong? What democracies are we so-called fighting for? And by the way, there are hundreds of thousands of Israelis now who are protesting in the streets because, let me pull this up, because Prime Minister Netanyahu is trying to overthrow, or as he says, what? Correct the courts, rein in their Supreme Court. And so hundreds of thousands of people there are protesting. There we are in Israel. Because what this is a takeover. He said this is a takeover of the courts. Now keep in mind that the Prime Minister Netanyahu, this is not his first go round. He said nothing about this in his previous term. So what's different? Well, he's got a case before the government, before the courts, that is, for corruption. And so he wants to do away with the power of their court. And as it says, Critical says his reforms, he's calling it reforms, will weaken the country's Supreme Court and erode democratic checks and balances. Remember that when you get into that thing about a dictator who's rising, he's got to get rid of these other parts of government. Well, here we are. And you can see what they're saying with the people, thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of Israelis that are protesting. They're saying shame, shame, because they understand that these moves by the prime minister and the far right part of his party wants to get rid of Palestinians altogether. Now that's on the political front. On the religious front in Israel, this is against the Jewish law, religious laws. The Jewish people are supposed to treat the stranger just as they treat anybody else. They are not supposed to override or treat them differently and discriminate against them. This goes against the Torah and the commandments and statutes of their religious laws. And there's not a lot of protests going on right now out of there. I know there was an attack upon the religious leaders there in Russia, saying that they didn't speak out against what was going on when Russia was invading Ukraine. Well, I think we got the same thing going on here in Israel, that the leading Jewish rabbis are pretty silent on this and allowing the taking illegally, the taking of Palestinians' land. So both religiously and politically, it's wrong. But the voices opposing this are pretty small and silent. Just to bring up a point,